The house always looked perfect at night. Soft golden lights spilled through tall glass windows, carefully chosen furniture sat untouched, and the silence felt expensive, like everything else Daniel had built. From the outside, it was the kind of life people envied. Inside, Angela had started to feel like a guest. She stood in the kitchen, one hand resting on the marble counter, watching the clock above the oven tick past 9. Dinner had gone cold nearly an hour ago. Again. Her phone buzzed faintly on the counter. No message from Daniel. Just a bank notification. She exhaled slowly and turned the stove off, even though the flame had been pointless for a while now. When the front door finally opened, it wasn't relief she felt. It was something quieter. Something heavier. Daniel stepped in, loosening his tie, his voice already halfway into a phone call.
Yeah,
I'll review the numbers in the morning. No, don't send it tonight. I said morning. He ended the call without looking at her. You're late, Angela said, not sharply, just stating what had become routine. Daniel dropped his keys into the bowl by the door. Busy day. You said that yesterday. And I meant it yesterday too. He walked past her, heading straight for the bar. The clink of ice in a glass filled the room. Angela watched him for a moment, searching for something, an explanation, a glance, a sign that he noticed her standing there. Dinner's ready, she said. I'm not hungry. You didn't eat lunch either. I'll grab something later. Angela's fingers tightened slightly against the counter. You always say that. Daniel took a sip of his drink, finally looking at her. What do you want me to say, Angela? That I'm starving? I'm not. She held his gaze. I want you to sit down with me. Just once. Like we used to. A pause stretched between them. Not long, but long enough to say everything. That was a long time ago, he replied. The words landed softly, but they didn't feel soft. Angela looked away first. She moved to the table and began clearing the plates, even though neither of them had touched the food. The quiet returned, thicker this time. There had been a time when this house sounded different. Laughter used to echo through the hallways. Late-night conversations, spontaneous plans, shared ideas. Back when Daniel would come home and talk for hours about his dreams, his strategies, his fears. Back when he asked for her opinion and actually listened. She had been there for every step. When the business was nothing more than a risky idea scribbled across a notepad. When the bank accounts were thin and the pressure was suffocating. She had stayed up with him, helping him refine pitches, organize plans, think through decisions he wasn't ready to face alone. You're good at this, he used to tell her. Better than me, honestly. She would laugh it off every time. But somewhere along the way, the words stopped. And now, so had everything else. Angela, Daniel said, pulling her back to the present. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Don't wait up. She turned toward him slowly. I don't wait anymore. For a brief second, something flickered across his face. Not guilt. Not regret. Just irritation. Then we're both getting what we want. He finished his drink and walked upstairs without another word. Angela stood there long after his footsteps disappeared. The house felt larger when he wasn't in the room. Colder too. She cleaned the kitchen in silence, her movements automatic. Plate by plate. Glass by glass. When she was done, she didn't turn on the television. She didn't check her phone. Instead, she walked into the living room and sat down on the edge of the couch, staring at nothing in particular. Her eyes drifted to a framed photo on the shelf across the room. It was taken years ago. Before the success. Before the distance. They were standing outside a tiny office space, both smiling like they had just won something bigger than they understood. Daniel's arm was around her shoulders. She looked proud. He looked grateful. Angela stood up and walked over to the photo, picking it up carefully. You don't even remember this version of us, she whispered. A faint sound from upstairs made her glance toward the staircase. Then came the soft vibration of a phone. Not hers. She hesitated. It wasn't the first time she'd heard it. Late-night notifications. Messages Daniel never acknowledged in front of her. At first, she told herself it was work. It had to be. His schedule had grown demanding, unpredictable. But doubt had a way of growing quietly. She placed the photo back and moved toward the stairs, each step measured, uncertain. The hallway light was still on when she reached the top. The bedroom door was slightly open. Inside, the bathroom light glowed. And on the nightstand, Daniel's phone lit up again. Angela froze in the doorway. She wasn't the kind of person who went through someone's phone. She never had been. Trust had always come easily to her. It had been the foundation of everything they built. But something about tonight felt different. The phone buzzed once more. Before she could stop herself, she walked over and picked it up. The screen was already awake. A message sat there, simple and devastating. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Angela's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, nothing moved. Not the air, not her hands, not even the thoughts trying to form in her mind. Then the bathroom door opened. Daniel stepped out, towel draped over his shoulder. He stopped when he saw her. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was breaking. The silence didn't last long. It shattered the moment Daniel saw the phone in Angela's hand. For a fraction of a second, something unguarded crossed his face, surprise, maybe even a flicker of panic. Then it disappeared, replaced by a calm so controlled it felt rehearsed. Angela didn't move. She simply turned the screen toward him. "Do you want to explain this?" she asked, her voice steady, almost unfamiliar to her own ears. Daniel exhaled slowly, like a man preparing for an inconvenience rather than a confrontation. "You shouldn't be going through my phone." That was his answer. Angela blinked once, absorbing it. "That's what you're worried about?" "It's about boundaries." She let out a quiet, disbelieving laugh. "Boundaries?" Her grip tightened slightly around the phone. "You crossed every boundary we ever had, and this is what you choose to defend?" Daniel walked past her, setting his towel down as if the conversation could wait. "You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" The word echoed sharply this time. "There's a woman texting you about last night, Daniel." "What exactly am I supposed to call this?" He didn't answer immediately. He poured himself a glass of water instead, his movements unhurried. Deliberate. "I was going to tell you," he said finally. Angela stared at him. "When? After you built a second life?" Daniel turned, leaning back against the dresser. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" she pressed. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that." Another pause. This one longer. He didn't look away, but he didn't soften either. "I've met someone," he said. The words landed clean, without hesitation. Angela felt something inside her shift, not break, not yet, but move in a way that made everything unstable. "Someone," she repeated quietly. "Yes." "How long?" Daniel hesitated this time. "A few months." She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Months." He nodded, as if confirming a business detail. Angela looked down at the phone still in her hand, then back at him. "And you thought I wouldn't find out?" "I said I was going to tell you." "That's not an answer," she said, her voice tightening. "That's an excuse." Daniel pushed himself off the dresser, his tone sharpening slightly. "What do you want from me, Angela?" "Honesty?" "I'm giving you that." "No," she said, stepping closer. "You're giving me what's left after you've already made your decision." "That's not fair." Her eyes flashed. "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" The word hung between them, heavy and unresolved. I gave you everything, she continued, her voice lower now but far more dangerous. Every year, every sacrifice, every part of me that believed in you when no one else did. And this is how you repay that? Daniel's expression didn't change. I didn't ask you to do all that. The sentence hit harder than anything else he had said. Angela froze. You didn't ask me, she repeated slowly. I built my company, he went on, his voice steady, almost detached. I made my choices. You were there, yes, but let's not pretend you carried it. For a moment, the room felt too small to hold the weight of what he had just said. Angela searched his face, looking for the man she used to know, the one who once called her his partner, his equal. But he wasn't there. Say that again, she said quietly. Daniel frowned slightly. I'm not going to repeat myself. Of course you're not, she replied, a faint, bitter smile forming. Because even you know how it sounds. He shook his head. You're twisting things. No, she said, her voice steadying in a way that surprised even her. I'm finally hearing them clearly. Another silence followed, but this one wasn't uncertain. It was final. Daniel moved toward the closet, pulling out a shirt like the conversation was already over. Look, this isn't working anymore. Angela watched him, her chest tightening. So that's it? I think we both know it's been over for a while. No, she said, her voice firm. You decided it was over. Don't rewrite this like we both agreed. He sighed, buttoning his shirt. I deserve to be happy. The sentence came out simple, almost justified. Angela felt something inside her crack, not loudly, not dramatically, but deep enough that she knew it wouldn't mend the same way again. And I didn't, she asked. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he picked up his watch, fastening it around his wrist. Her name is Chloe, he said, as if offering a courtesy. Angela stared at him, disbelief flickering across her face. You think I care what her name is? I'm trying to be respectful. She let out a hollow laugh. Respectful would have been not doing this in the first place. Daniel's jaw tightened. This isn't going anywhere productive. No, Angela said softly. It's going exactly where you wanted it to. He glanced at her, something impatient in his eyes now. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The words dropped like a final verdict. Angela didn't react immediately. She just stood there, letting them settle. A lawyer, she repeated. Yes. So you planned all of this, she said, more to herself than to him. It's better this way, Daniel replied. Clean. Efficient. Efficient. The word echoed in her mind, cold and precise. What about the house? She asked after a moment. Daniel didn't hesitate. It's in my name. And the accounts? Also mine. Angela nodded slowly, each piece falling into place with brutal clarity. You made sure of that. I protected what I built, he said. She looked at him then, really looked at him, not as her husband, not as the man she once loved, but as someone she no longer recognized. You mean what we built, she corrected quietly. Daniel didn't respond. The absence of that response said everything. Angela placed his phone back on the nightstand with deliberate care. When do I leave? As soon as possible, he said. I've already arranged for you to stay somewhere temporarily. Temporarily, she repeated, the word tasting foreign. It'll give you time to figure things out. She nodded again, though nothing about this felt like something she could figure out. The apartment smelled faintly of fresh paint and something older that refused to leave. Angela stood just inside the doorway, her small suitcase resting beside her. The room was barely larger than the kitchen she had left behind. A narrow bed pressed against the wall, a single window overlooking a parking lot, and a table that looked like it had survived better years. This is temporary, she whispered to herself. The words didn't comfort her. She stepped inside and closed the door. The sound echoed too loudly, as if the space wasn't used to being occupied. For a moment, she simply stood there, unsure where to begin. There was no staff to greet her, no familiar routine waiting. Just silence. Angela placed her suitcase near the bed and sat down slowly. The mattress dipped under her weight, unfamiliar and stiff. She ran her hand across the thin blanket, her mind struggling to catch up with the reality around her. 2 weeks ago, she had a home. Now she had a key. That was the difference. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She hesitated before reaching for it, half expecting something. A message. A mistake. An apology. It was none of those things. A reminder notification. Rent due in 14 days. Angela stared at the screen, then let out a quiet breath. Right, she murmured. Reality. She placed the phone down and leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes for just a second. But the second stretched. Memories came uninvited. Late nights at the old dining table, papers scattered everywhere, Daniel pacing while she organized his thoughts into something workable. Her handwriting filling notebooks with strategies he would later present as his own. The excitement in his voice when deals went through. You see things I don't, he used to say. She had believed him. Now, she wasn't sure what to believe. Angela opened her eyes abruptly and sat up. Enough, she said out loud, as if someone needed to hear it. The next morning came too quickly. She dressed carefully, choosing one of the few outfits she had managed to bring with her. It wasn't new, but it was professional. It had to be. The first interview was across town. Angela arrived 10 minutes early, her posture straight, her expression composed. She had practiced this version of herself in the mirror, calm, capable, unaffected. When her name was called, she stepped into the office with quiet confidence. The man across the desk glanced at her resume, eyebrows lifting slightly. You've been out of the workforce for a while. I've been working, Angela replied. Just not under my own name. He gave a polite smile, the kind that didn't reach the eyes. I see. She explained her experience, her involvement in business strategy, operations, growth planning. She spoke clearly, without hesitation. But something in the room had already shifted. We're looking for someone more current, he said after a moment. Current? Angela repeated. Someone who's been actively in the industry. I have been, she said, her voice steady. I just wasn't the face of it. He nodded, but the decision was already made. We'll keep your information on file. Angela stood, offering a small, professional smile. Thank you for your time. She knew what that meant. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself and walked toward the bus stop, her steps slower than before. The second interview went the same way. So did the third. Different offices, different faces, same outcome. You're overqualified. You've been away too long. We're not sure you'd fit the culture. Each rejection chipped away at something she hadn't realized was still fragile. By the end of the week, Angela sat at the small table in her apartment, a stack of printed resumes in front of her. The edges had started to curl. She picked one up, reading through it again as if something might change. It didn't. Her reflection caught in the dark screen of her phone lying nearby. She stared at it for a moment, studying the lines that hadn't been there years ago. Too old, she said quietly. The words didn't sound like hers. Angela stood abruptly and walked to the mirror hanging on the wall. She faced herself fully this time. You're not done, she said, her voice firmer now. But the reflection didn't argue. It just stared back. Days turned into a routine she hadn't chosen. Wake up. Search. Apply. Wait. Sometimes she skipped meals without noticing. Other times, she ate just to fill the silence. One afternoon, after another rejection email, she let the phone slip from her hand onto the table. I gave him everything, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Every year, every idea, every part of me that mattered. The room didn't respond. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, she felt it, something close to breaking. I have nothing, she added. The words hung there, heavy and final. Angela pushed her chair back and stood, pacing the small space. No, she said suddenly, shaking her head. That's not true. She stopped near the bed, her eyes landing on the suitcase she hadn't fully unpacked. With a sharp breath, she walked over and pulled it open. Clothes shifted aside as she searched through it, her movements quick, almost urgent. At the bottom, tucked beneath everything else, was a worn notebook. Angela froze. She hadn't opened it in years. Slowly, she picked it up, brushing her fingers over the cover as if it might disappear. When she flipped it open, the pages revealed exactly what she remembered. Ideas. Plans. Strategies. Her handwriting filled every line, clear, detailed, deliberate. Market analyses. Growth projections. Risk assessments. The blueprint of everything Daniel's company had become. Angela sat down on the edge of the bed, the notebook resting in her lap. She turned page after page, each one pulling her further from the version of herself she had been living as. You see things I don't. His voice echoed in her memory. She closed the notebook suddenly. No, she said, her voice stronger now. I saw everything. The realization settled slowly but firmly. She hadn't lost her value. She had given it away. Angela stood, holding the notebook tightly. The room didn't feel as small anymore. It didn't feel as suffocating. It felt like a beginning. She walked to the table and placed the notebook down carefully, opening it again. This time, she wasn't looking back. She was looking forward. If I built him once, she murmured, her eyes scanning the pages with new focus. Her lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something more certain. I can build myself. Outside, the world moved on like it always did, cars passing, people rushing, lives continuing. Inside that small apartment, something shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough. Enough to change everything.